Senate, Governor, Attorney General, Congress. The 2026 board is set, and the stakes have never been higher. Will the Texas first record hold? Or is it time for a new guard in Austin and D.C.? We go one-on-one with the candidates and fact-check the campaign trail in real time. Polls, players, and pure Texas politics. This is Battleground Texas.
Hello, I'm Greg Grugan. We are now just 5 days away from the start of early voting in Texas. Let's get right into some of the day's biggest political headlines. In Congressional District 10, the race for Michael McCall's seat, former Elon Musk attorney Chris Gobber is emerging as the frontrunner in a crowded Republican field. He's already pulled in over $1 million, making the race a high-stakes test of tech influence in Central Texas. In the U.S. Senate race, Democrat James Tallarico's camp says he's pulled in a massive $7.4 million in just 6 weeks. He's trailing Jasmine Crockett in the latest poll, but that cash influx is about to flood your airwaves. And in the Republican fight for AG, State Senator Joan Huffman is branding herself as a, quote, rule follower. She's openly criticized her opponents who have framed the race as a spiritual battle and a fight against the onslaught of woke ideology. Let's bring in my colleagues Stephen Dial in Dallas and Rudy Koski in Austin. Rudy, what do you find most compelling in that bushel basket of breaking developments?
Boy, you covered a lot, and a lot of it is very interesting. As I expected, it looks like the Congressional 10 primary is going to be a Republican cage match. As for James Tallarico's ATM deposit, it was big, and it will be interesting to see how much he spends over the next few weeks. Will Tallarico keep most of the cash, anticipating a May runoff, or will he buy down a full-court primary media blast right now? And Joan Huffman, bless her heart, in the GOP Attorney General's race is looking more and more like a talented March Madness team on the bubble and looking at the bracket from the outside. The boys holding the ball there, and it's all or nothing time for her, Greg.
All right, Stephen, what's blasting through on your radar?
Yeah, like what Rudy said, I mean, we're coming down to the wire now. 5 days until early voting. Tallarico has a lot of cash. He was recently up here in North Texas at the University of North Texas talking to young voters. I'm interested to see how many young voters are going to turn out. We talk about this every year. Will young voters make a difference? That's what I'm looking to see.
All right, in the Republican scramble for Texas Attorney General, there is only one candidate who can claim to have the full backing of the incumbent, Ken Paxton. And that is Aaron Reitz, the hard-charging ex-Marine and fighting Texas Aggie, who's looking to swoop in on the strength of his resume as a fighter and land a spot in the runoff.
When voters are looking at who they want to serve as the next chief legal officer of Texas, they see somebody like me who served in the senior ranks of Trump's DOJ, got called a true MAGA attorney warrior for the Constitution, someone who served as Paxton's offensive coordinator. I have his endorsement to succeed him as the next AG. And so we are skyrocketing and we are ripening at just the right time to be able to show real strong on March 3rd. If only about half of the people who vote for Ken Paxton for U.S. Senate then drop down a couple rungs and vote Aaron Reitz for Attorney General, we're also in the runoff. And so it's really important that voters understand, for those who really like the work that Ken did over the past 12 years now as our Attorney General, he has endorsed his successor. He said that Aaron Reitz is the only qualified candidate in the race. Why? Because I've spent my career leading legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories for Texas, for Texans, for our constitutional and conservative values. That's what I do, and I'm ready to do it on day one. Let's do a quick review, right? Chip Roy has spent his entire political career opposing Ken Paxton and opposing President Trump. Remember, he campaigned against him in the 24 presidential cycle, said he should be impeached. Trump has had some not so kind things to say about him over the years. Joan Huffman was a real lawyer as a local prosecutor here in Harris County about 40 years ago. She was a criminal judge about 20 years ago. And I respect that history, but really since the early 2000s, she hasn't done anything of note legally. She's just served in the Senate, and nobody knows what she's been doing as a lawyer. And even if I were to credit that legal experience, I would say, look, we're not running to be the state's prosecutor. This is the Attorney General. It is a civil litigation job that deals primarily with civil matters that go taken up on appeal to the U.S. and the Texas Supreme Courts. Last and potentially least, we've got May's middleweight, who went to law school 16 years ago, immediately graduated and inherited his family oil company. Literally no law experience whatsoever. No clients, no courtroom, no trials, no appeals, no motions, no convictions, no investigations, no nothing. And so if Texans want to keep their foot on the gas hard, keep that energy high in a direction of fighting for Texas, I'm the only candidate in this race that can do it. And that's a huge reason why Paxton endorsed me.
All right, Stephen, while Wrights is down in the latest UH poll, he asserts that if just half of the folks who plan to vote for Paxton also support him, he can seriously contend for that second runoff spot. Agree or disagree?
Man, that's tough, because if you look at that hobby school poll, he's polling at 6%. Now, this will definitely go to a runoff, but Rice is going to have to keep throwing haymakers like he did in that interview, calling Mace Middleton May's middleweight, kind of politely saying bless your heart to Joan Huffman. But I don't think that a Paxton endorsement is going to get him over the hump. Clearly, people either don't know his name or just think Chip Roy or Mays Milton is doing a better job. And Mays Milton is blanketing the airways. I mean, everyone knows by now, MAGA Mays.
All right, Rudy, Wright says Mays Middleton is flat unqualified for this job because he hasn't ever done it, as in practice law. Do you think Republican primary voters actually care about courthouse experience?
You would hope so, but, who knows right now? MAGA Mays, though, we do know, certainly wins the early campaign catchphrase game. But Wright's doubling down and dubbing Middleton as May's middleweight. that was a great line and a great part of your interview. Solid counterpunch to that catchphrase from Middleton. But he will have to throw that a lot more, like Stephen said. His argument against Huffman seems more like a miss at best. Maybe a backhanded slant. Here's the problem. Primary voters certainly like that shiny, eye-catching campaign and the names that they know. A bromance with Ken Paxton and Huffman's Judge Dredd campaign of I know the law. They're not flashy, and that's a big problem in a four-person race, Greg.
All right, speaking of Mays Middleton, he's bombarding the airwaves with a brutal attack ad aimed squarely at frontrunner Chip Roy, who's doing his very best to shrug it off.
Trump doesn't trust D.C. Congressman Chip Roy because Roy betrayed MAGA. Chip Roy defended Liz Cheney, supported Trump's impeachment. Roy sided with the trans lobby to allow child transgender surgeries. Roy told Trump voters. You can kiss. And Roy helped illegal aliens avoid deportation. That's why President Trump doesn't trust backstabbing D.C. Congressman Chip Roy.
One of your opponents, Mays Middleton, state senator, is got ads out now saying that you betrayed the president, something to that effect.
Look, I mean, I went through cancer 14 years ago, so political ads don't bother me in the slightest bit. That's particularly true if, like I was spending $10 million of my family money to poll in the single digits or barely in the double digits, I'd probably be a little testy too. That's what you're going to do. You're going to throw stuff against the wall and see if it sticks. I don't think people are buying it. Nobody in their right mind thinks that I'm not working directly with President Trump right now to deliver. We're working hand in hand with the White House. The president and I are good friends. We get along great, and I think most people see that. They know that I'm battling the trans lobby and all of that stuff. These are all nonsense allegations and, frankly, some desperate politics, and I'm getting it from a lot of my competitors.
Stephen, quick response.
Yeah, and it's funny. I guess the Rights campaign ears hear us talking about them because we literally just got an email from them saying that poll was wrong and that he's surging. In reference to Chip Roy, he can throw it back in Mays and say that in Kerrville, President Trump, in an ad, he says it, that he says that Chip Roy is tough, but he's a good guy. And so, it depends on which ad you believe.
Rudy, quick take.
Yeah, one thing that you can count on from Chip Roy, he's not going to shy and he's not going to back down. He's going to swing back, and that's why this was going to be a big fight, big, ugly primary.
All right, stay with us. Battleground Texas. We'll be right back. Pretty easy to tell we are just days away from early voting in the Lone Star State, with new ads dropping on air and online every single day. Here's a look at new offerings from Trip Roy scoring a Ted Cruz endorsement, and Democrat for Agriculture Commissioner Nate Sheets touting his business acumen.
I'm Ted Cruz, and here's what I know about Chip Roy. No one, and I mean no one, has fought harder to help President Trump make America great again. Stopping the invasion, destroying the cartels, rooting out voter fraud.
Hi, I'm Nate Sheets, a proud veteran, Christian, and a family man. I was blessed to turn one beehive into the largest honey company in America, Nature Nate's. Then I stepped away to work for you, all Texans. I've worked with farmers, I fought for healthy food, and stood up to big food when they cut corners.
On social media, Sheets' opponent Sid Miller had some fun with this post, saying, quote, "The vibe when radical left embarrassment Texas Tribune calls you the underdog and then has to publish a poll showing you up by 30 points. And Fox News posted this party of one. The SAVE Act, designed to keep non-citizens from voting in federal elections, passed despite overwhelming opposition from Democrats. The lone Democrat yes vote came from Texas Representative Henry Cuellar, who joined 217 Republicans in passing the bill. You'll remember last year Trump pardoned Cuellar, who was facing fraud charges. Guys, things can change quickly on Battleground Texas. I mean, just a week ago, Congressman Roy was talking about bagging the 50% needed to send the competition packing without a runoff. But if the hobby school poll is any indicator, that ain't happening. Rudy, is this an empirical example of checkbook power as executed by MAGA Mays Middleton?
Yeah, you know, we were talking about this earlier this month and expecting a big bounce for Middleton, and that happened. But, you know, Roy has some political baggage, and Middleton has done a very good job of reminding primary voters that the congressman's luggage is not exactly bright red. If Chip Roy is the GOP nominee, you can also expect the Democrats to also bring up Roy's voting record. One big vote that could be damaging to him is Roy's no vote on the anti-lynching bill, the Emmett Till Act. He was one of only 3 in the House to vote no, claiming it was woke and legally too broad. You can bet that excuse won't pass the political campaign ad optics test if Roy is the GOP nominee. Greg?
All right, Stephen, after a furious flurry of activity in the Democratic Senate primary, things have quieted down somewhat. What are you hearing out of Team Crockett up there in Dallas?
What I'm hearing is they're now spending money. Our sales department letting me know that they made some ad buys this week. You know, it goes back to our conversation last week of multiple people saying Tallarico is everywhere. Where is Crockett? Where is Crockett? The ad is out now. They posted on digital during the Super Bowl, and now it's airing in major markets, urban markets. And so we'll see if it sticks. I know some people have been critical of the ad, saying it's very Gen Z, and it appears that the campaign is deliberately trying to reach a certain type of voter.
All right, quickly, Rudy, I noticed in the hobby school polling that the gap between Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and little-known Democrat Vicki Goodman is just 5 points. You think Patrick should be spending some of that $38 million war chest sooner rather than later?
You know, I was talking with a lot of insiders, and what they told me today is that Patrick and Abbott are basically going to stay where they're at right now, and that's focusing on tabletop economic issues, talking about their tax cuts, and then also trying to help their friends that are down on the ballot. Later, they're going to really open up, this summer, they were saying, really open up that war chest.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Don't go away. Battleground Texas will be right back. Welcome back. Governor Greg Abbott barnstorming across the Lone Star State, bearing gifts, the kind of stuff that can get lots of Republicans reelected, like spending limits on local government, sweeping property tax cuts, and even the complete abolition of public school levies forever.
Listen, this is your property that we're talking about. Your property should never have an increase in property taxes without you, the people of Texas, having a say in it. I say that no property tax increase should ever be put into place without first being voted on by the voters, and it has to get 2/3 vote to be able to pass. My plan is to reduce the 10% increase in property tax appraisals that's currently allowed, to reduce that to no more than 3% a year. Your home should be appraised for property tax purposes only once every 5 years as opposed to every year.
Okay, guys, strict spending caps for local government, a 3% annual ceiling on home value increases, local votes on all tax hikes with a supermajority necessary for approval, and elimination of property taxation by ISDs on homesteads. That's a heaping helping of red meat for tax-weary Texans of all political persuasions. And if the GOP holds power, my guess is he can pull it off. Stephen, your reaction?
Yeah, and this is just following up on what Republicans did in the legislative session that we just had, talking about lowering property taxes, talking to homeowners, saying that they should have a say in when things are raised and the like. And so, you know, that is an issue, like you mentioned, that goes beyond Republican or Democrat. No one wants to pay a bunch of money for their property tax. And so it is I guess you could say, across the line type topic, but I believe the Hinojosa campaign is also talking about some similar things because it's something that can bridge the gap between Republicans and Democrats.
Rudy Abbott's playbook is simple but effective. Public safety, economic development, and let Texans keep as much of their hard-earned money as possible. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and we're going to get a lot more of that tabletop issue talk from Abbott. He loves to brag that Texas remains a global economic power, and it's expected he will try to carry that message beyond the primary. Democrats will probably counter and claim the GOP tax plan's really not true tax reform, Greg.
All right, Stephen, quickly, if you're Gina Hinojosa and the Democrats, how do you react to that Abbott plan?
Go ahead, Rudy.
Oh, I was going to say that Hinojosa wants to talk about affordability, but it's probably going to come down to school choice with her.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll wait and see. All right, lots more of Battleground Texas just ahead, so stick around. Welcome back. Gene Wu made news this week when opposition research dug up a 2024 soundbite in which the Houston Democrat called on blacks, Latinos, and Asians to unite politically against the, quote, white oppressor. I wanted to devote my time in this segment to congressional candidate Nick Tran's response.
That word, oppressor, that wasn't an accident. That's an ideology. Because the fastest way to control people is to convince them they are victims. That's not empowerment. That's dependency. And that's how you distract and divide Americans by race and grievance, while real power quietly concentrates in Washington. That's not how citizens in a constitutional republic talk. That's how Marxists talk.
Wow. Rudy, what's on your plate?
Yeah, that was a powerful response. You know, I've started noticing some possible storm clouds brewing in the railroad commissioner's race. The fight for the GOP nomination has incumbent Jim Wright trying to fend off two reform-minded challengers and a hard-right social media grenade launcher. You know, that primary race has the makings for a good subplot in the TV series Landman. Wonder what Billy Bob thinks about all that. Stephen?
Hey, I like Landman. That's a good show. We can talk about that off air. But what I'm looking forward to, I mean, we are 5 days from early voting. I want to see what turnout is going to look like in the large areas and the rural areas as well. But I want to see what turnout is going to look like on that first day. I need to talk to our meteorologist to see if it's going to be clear skies, because I think, guys, that will give us a big indicator about voter turnout and voter interest in this primary. All right. To see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channels.
And of course, keep the conversation going on social media.
We started off the week talking with the head of the Democrats here in Texas. We're closing the week out with the top man in the GOP in Texas. See you then.